up, you guys? This is Bart coming to you from TST Industries in sunny Florida, bringing you another episode of TST Garage with our beautiful S1000RR. This is the current generation S1000RR. BMW has really essed the bed with this whole tail lighting system. We decided, hey, you know what? We can remedy that. And here you see our tail lighting system mounted in tandem with this behemoth here. The video we're about to show you will focus on mounting a Fender Eliminator in place of this guy, but in the interest of moving forward, we've already mounted our tail lighting system on it, so you will see that the OEM signal / tail light lamps are disconnected and they're not currently working. We have all of these parts on our website, tstindustries.com, but we do sell things as modules, and therefore we have to showcase the installation videos as modules as well. So we already did a video on the tail lighting system. If you're interested, our YouTube channel has it, and also it could be accessed at tstindustries.com. For the purpose of this video, we will be focusing only on the Fender Eliminator components. Here in front of me, we have the two different variants of Fender Eliminator that we do offer. There is a third little variant that some of you guys may be interested in. It actually doesn't provide any means for remounting your license plate. We call it a closeout system, and it's basically these components that replace they close out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender, and the mounting is basically along the lines of what we'll show you here in this video. You just don't hook up any of the license plate carrying components onto this system. If you're interested in just closing out that hole because you have either a homemade license plate bracket, or you have that swing arm mounted license plate bracket, or you're one of those guys that ride without a license plate, it's up to you. You sell this component separately if you're interested. Here we have the two different variants. As you can see, I've pre-assembled this. This actually comes to you in a box in this form. You have these components. We will show you how to build that in this video series, and then subsequently how to fit it on the bike. These installations are actually pretty simple. I am pretty enthused about how BMW designed this bike. It breaks down very easily, it builds back up very easily, and our parts fit onto the bike very easily. Let's talk about a couple of nuances of the two different kits we have here, and then we'll get into installation. Here you see our Elite-1 adjustable Fender Eliminator. The closeout is exactly the shape of the fender pad. When you remove the fender, it leaves a hole. This thing fits right in there, makes it really nice and cosmetic, closes everything out. Debris and water have a harder time getting in there, so you're good there. There's one really cool thing about this system. It does enable adjustability of the license plate hanging angle. This is up to you. Loosen these screws, tighten them back up when you've adjusted, and you're good to go. It's customizable. The closeout itself, we actually decided to spend a little bit extra money and time in milling to put in these textured fields that make it look congruent with the actual design language of the whole undertail system. I think a lot of guys out there will appreciate that. Makes it a lot more pleasing to the eye, and also the function is still there. All of these components are CNC machined aluminum, black anodized, will probably outlast your bike. Most people crash their bikes before these components wear out. All of our fasteners are stainless steel, so you'll have years of corrosion-free performance out of these parts. Another little note here, we do have a small hole to pass our license plate light wire through. We decided to put a very, very small hole in there that fits basically just a 2-wire cable. We do not want to open up really big holes in the closeout because it's supposed to protect against water and debris. Whether you choose this light or any other lighting for your license plate on the market, you'll be able to pass 2 little wires through there. Now, we do sell these as a separate unit within the category of product for this bike, and we also have this system as a drop-down option within the product page for all these components. So either way you go, if you do intend to use our system, you actually do have to opt for it. So please make sure if you are shopping for one of these systems, there's a drop-down menu there. Click yes, please add the license plate light to my order. Now this license plate light is plug and play. It does have the OEM connection on one side and this easy connector to connect to this side on the other side. The reason why we did this in the first place is so we don't have to put giant holes through here for the giant connectors that BMW uses. This is just one of those things that we decided to do to make the outer components very cosmetically pleasing and also resist the entry of debris and things like that. So that was our choice. If you like the system, add it. If you want to use something else, that's cool too. All right, let's move over to the low mount. This was the high mount that mounts your license plate right about here, kind of close to the tail. We call it the stock location. This bracket mounts your license plate down here. We call it the low mount. You mount it either under an exhaust bracket. If you've removed your passenger pegs, you mount it in place of the passenger pegs. If you still have passenger pegs, we've included all the necessary hardware to actually make your installation with the passenger pegs. You still get our closeout so that you don't have unsightly holes here and your whole undertail is actually cosmetically pleasing. And then we've included our stainless steel black powder coated bracket that achieves mounting of your license plate down here, enough hardware to get you going. And then we also have our black anodized aluminum license plate holding hardware that comes with this guy to make the connection of your license plate to this bracket really nice and cosmetically pleasing. Here you see two bump-ons that we use on the bottom of the license plate should it actually contact the sub tray here. Different size license plates will hang a little different, and we'll have several nuances to consider when mounting this, obviously with all the three options that I talked about: exhaust bracket, passenger pegs, no passenger pegs. This will move the license plate away and towards the sub tray here. So in at least one of those variants, you will need these bump-ons to damp vibration. Otherwise you'll be riding around and license plate will be buzzing on you, and that's not cool. So we've provided you with those. In this video, we will be focusing on installing only the Elite-1 adjustable Fender Eliminator so that you can follow and know how to install this part. Additionally, we will show you how to install the license plate light with this module. Okay, you guys, before we get to the fun stuff on the bike, I wanted to show you how to pre-configure the parts that arrive at your door in this condition into something that looks more like this and is pretty much ready to be put on the bike. Here you have the closeout. Here you have mounting hardware for this entire kit to go onto the closeout, and then we have these longer screws here that accomplish the mounting of all of this into the bike. Basically go through these countersunk screw holes and go in place of the OEM hardware that comes out of the bike. So for now, so that we don't confuse things, let's put the closeout to the side along with the hardware that comes out of the main bag that contains also this entire assembly. Let's get this guy open. We have our flat bracket that has a smooth side and then also a brush side with the TST Industries logo on it, as well as countersunk holes. We will position it this way. And then we have a baggie of components here. When you spill them out, you'll see a couple aluminum parts and then also fasteners. Separate them. I'm going to show you how to position them so that it's very intuitive how to get everything together into an assembly. We have these hinges. These hinges have an accepting boss here for our L brackets that then mount this flat bracket onto the assembly. They also do feature a straight side and side with an arc. The arc side will face the back of the bike, so if this is screwed into our closeout, you will have the arced side towards the rear of the bike. Rear of the bike is that way, so we are positioning these guys with the curved part towards the back. Now, these L brackets are not the same thing. They are mirror image of each other. All right, okay. So, we want to position them in a way that this license plate bracket, flat bracket, is angled this way. If you turn them around, you will basically cause this guy to sit like this, and this may be your flavor, and within the modularity of this package, it's within your capability of doing that. So if you're adventurous and want to check out what that looks like and then decide, cool, go for it. For my typical assembly, I will go this way. Now, we have several pieces of hardware here, so I want to position them so that it's intuitive where everything goes. We have small countersunk screws that fit into these countersunk holes. Then we have the M5 flange nuts that go on these guys right behind these brackets. This is what it looks like. Goes through this hole, through the bracket, like so, and then we cap it with the nut. I'm not gonna go for the assembly just yet. Just needed to illustrate that to you guys. Okay, so we have these guys in position, and then we have remaining washer and screw ×2, and this basically makes this connection. We superimpose this hole that is sized appropriately for the boss of this hinge. Make sure that we have the curved geometry going towards the rear, and then this screw goes in there along with that washer. All right, here we go. The simplest way to do this is to start with this and hook it up to the L brackets, and then subsequently to this set of hinges, and then onto our closeout. So let's do that now. As you can see here, we have the innermost holes engaged. So I will do that now. This screwed connection will require a 3mm Allen from the outside, and then an 8mm box or open-ended wrench from the inside. And what I'm going to do here is bottom it out, but leave just a little bit of adjustability. Don't like this thing to be too sloppy, moving around on me too much, but I also don't want it to be too tight, because then it becomes a pain to assemble. So what I typically do is go all the way to bottom and then back out a little bit, give it a little test, make sure I could move it around. You want it to be loose enough that you can move it without scratching surfaces, but again, not too loose so it's sloppy. Repeat the procedure on the opposite side. All right, here we go. So again, if we were to hold these brackets kind of level with the ground, you should have this sloping like this, and this will now face the rear of the motorcycle. Now, these guys do not have any means of locking this thread, as opposed to these guys, they do have a locking element within the nut. This is a nylock locking nut, so once we put some pressure on this, it's good to go, it won't vibrate off. For the rear connections, I would suggest that you guys use at least a medium thread locking compound. Here I have a blue thread locking compound that is a medium strength anaerobic chemical. Put it on the threads, and then vibration won't take off your parts. If you don't use a thread locking compound, you will have to tighten the screw threads with extra force, and it's just a good idea to get thread lock on here. All right, again, curved, straight, curve goes towards the rear. We line up the hole with the boss. Once concentric, it'll pop on, and then you just get the screw seated in there. And this actual screw takes a 4mm Allen. And once we bottom it out, it gets locked in place. We will go through a final adjustment procedure. Once this is on the bike and the license plate is on it, repeat the procedure on this side. Pretty simple so far. Shouldn't be too intimidating. Now we basically have the same setup that is hanging off here. So we'll bring our closeout and then also the mounting hardware for that closeout. 2 M6x12 screws, 2 small washers. They go through the top, and guess what? We will again use thread locking compound on these connections. All right, so you want to use the innermost holes. The outers are used for mounting to the bike. Bring the screw in alignment with one of these hinge bosses, the appropriate side hinge boss. Engage the thread, move on to the other side. All right, now these are 2 independent connections. They will probably move around on you a little bit. So you want to get them nice and snug. And then you can actually use the 10mm open-ended wrench side to align them a little bit better so that they are actually parallel and enable you to adjust your angle. And then we are going to lock them down. If at this point they do shift on you off axis, off being parallel, then you could actually hold them with the wrench, but mine didn't. They're good to go. But I did get some thread lock on here, so I'm gonna grab a paper towel and clean that off. Some of these chemicals are actually corrosive, so you don't want to get them on surfaces and leave them on there for too long because they will eat into the surface. All right, one more thing to do here. Obviously, these brackets are slotted. They are meant to enable adjustability left and right. For this particular case, we are tapped out on the innermost distance, so they do not offer any more adjustability beyond that. They just hang center. So we could actually just lock them down. Use my 8mm and 3mm Allen combo here. Get these guys locked down. We'll be ready to go to the bike. All right, nice and simple. Now we have the whole module ready. Mounting screws are ready. Let's go ahead and take some stuff off the bike. Let's start with removing the seat cowl or seat. Once that's off, access to the inside here, and then we will also additionally need to take these 2 painted outer panels off. For that purpose, I have chosen a T25 Torx for these 2 fasteners, 1 on each side. And then once these fasteners clear out, the remainder of the holding fasteners for this panel are press-in fasteners that exist here, 2 here, and 3 up here. So we'll have to use a proper sequence to clear them. Get my hands under here, go up the line to here, and this one pops out. Then the front ones, basically on a slight up angle and outward from the center plane of the bike is the direction you want to be pulling. And then up here, the sequence is front to rear. Do not pull too hard. You want to make sure that we clear the fasteners out, but the panel doesn't jump up. There is one last little tab here that fits into an interference window. So we want to make sure that we clear it out free and we don't snap it off. Again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we have the 2 that fit in here, and this guy that comes out of here. Repeat the steps on the opposite side. And now we have access to where the wiring on this bike is. Now, this setup is unique in that we already installed our TST Industries tail light system on this bike. So that is what is plugged in. This extra plug you see here is actually the fender lighting system that used to be plugged in here. If the only lighting that is present on your bike is the fender lighting, then this will still be plugged in. You'll need to unplug it and route it back into this under seat compartment here and free it. Same thing on the other side. Obviously we have our taillight on here, so that remains plugged in. Okay, when I was displaying this on the other side, I didn't show you guys the actual mechanism of removal of this connector from its mating connector, so I'll do that on this side. I've allowed myself to slip this connector set along with its keeper off the sub tray. For that purpose, there is a small window here that has to clear a tab that's in there. You basically lift up gently on that window and disconnect the connector that goes in there. If you've dislodged this, obviously you want to put it back on the sub tray where it went, and that would disconnect your fender lighting if you had the stock fender lighting still on. So we snake that back into this compartment, and then we're left with one connector here. You can see I have it free here. Lift up on the window, tab clears out. This is your license plate light. Two conductors within this connector. Just comes down. The remaining portion of the connector that's on the harness side stays hooked up to the sub tray. And sneak that back into this compartment, and then obviously I've disconnected my tail lighting system here, so I'm going to put it back to how it needs to be. If you don't have this set up, disregard this step. All right, I have all my 3 cable sets for the fender lighting off and snaked back into the appropriate compartment. Now I'm going to use that T25 Torx wrench or Torx bit to undo the fender screw. There are only 2. It's pretty cool how BMW designed the system to tab in and only use 2 fasteners. I'll show you guys where they go in just a second. Get the fasteners out and then let the rear end of the fender drop, and basically in this motion tab out these tabs from the receiving geometry. Get the wiring out, and here we go. Under here, this is where the screws go into. So this is where you look for them, take them out, and perform the steps I just showcased. All right, here we go. Our pre-built module here fits right in this spot, close out all this geometry, and it is fastened through these holes into the receiving holes from the fasteners that I just took out of the fender, right? I did allow myself to put a little bit of thread lock on here. And at this point, if you're not using a license plate light, these will be the steps. If you are using some kind of a license plate light, you have to route it before you put these components on. If you've decided to use our license plate light, basically have to get it around this geometry so that we get our license plate light in position for being clamped by the license plate. And then we need to go and route through this hole from the bottom to the top. I'm going to do that now. Want to leave a little bit of slack. We could always adjust that a little bit later. This cable will be decently free to move around. Now we just go back through the hole in the sub tray here that all of the other wiring came out of during the disassembly. We have 3 holes, 2 for the tabs from the fender and 1 larger one for the wiring. That is where we're going to go through. We hold this setup in place. We find those threaded holes for these countersunk screws here. I like to engage the threads by hand on both sides and then use a tool to tighten down this connection. The tool will be a 3mm Allen. Just got to make sure that you actually pop in the closeout into the well. It just got bound up on me just a little bit, and the aft end was sitting on the lip here of this subtray plastic. So I loosened it up a little bit and then I popped it in, and now it's ready to be fastened down. With the use of that thread locking agent that I put on there, we don't have to go too tight on these connections. Just bottom it out and make sure there's ample friction there, and thread lock will do the rest. All right, this is all looking good. We have the cable going inside. We've already witnessed where the connection is. We'll make that connection in just a moment. Let me throw a license plate on here so that we can adjust our license plate hanging angle. I'm basically going to reuse whatever hardware came with my OEM setup. Here you can see a strip of adhesive that we've included on the back side of the pad here that interfaces with the license plate. Now, I chose to put that there in the design phase of the license plate light because some people worry about license plate lights falling off. Now, in all of my years of building these kits, I've never actually used that adhesive. I just use the clamping force in between there, and that's always good enough for me. But choice is yours. We've provided you with that freedom, so exercise that freedom however you want. I'll tighten this down. There is a little bit of adjustability up and down in the slots here. I'm going to keep it here, and then we can unlock the hinge just a tiny little bit. I'll show you the range of adjustment here. If you don't have ample slack here, you can potentially go beyond the range of the wire and rip it out. So just be careful about that if you're using a license plate light here. For me, I like this angle, and it works with how much wire I have in there. Obviously, I can extend that wire length. Just consider that before you start adjusting things. I like this angle. It is safe from the suspension travel. Obviously, if you just put it up and down and you have a long European plate or something like that, you may have contact with the tire. You don't want that. So please adjust it appropriately to your particular use case. And we lock these guys down here on the hinge with a 4mm Allen. And now we have to make our connection. So let's look at this side of the bike again, use our plug and play connection, and we'll be good to go. All right, we have our plug and play portion of the connection for our license plate light. The license plate light receiving connector is right here, hangs off of the subtray. If yours is dislodged, just find the connector that looks like this, has this rounded window, has 2 conductors in it, and then obviously this is the harness facing side. Slide that in, make sure it locks in place, that little tab, and now we have our quick connector. Lift up on the tabs on the empty side. On the side that's already filled, yellow is positive, black is negative. We'll have to get our wire for the license plate light through the trunk and under this section here where all the wiring goes. Typically, this is where you took the wiring out of in the disassembly. I try not to tangle wires, so I'll make sure that I'm not tangling with my taillight wiring there. Don't want to cause too much tension either, so I leave some slack in the trunk compartment. And now we can actually make our connection. Here we have roughly how these license plate lights come. If for some reason you've made this connection and it's not lighting up, what you can do is grab a stripper and remove a little bit extra from the insulation. It may or may not be necessary. You can also fold these guys in half to create a little bit more bulk at the end. And then you will just bottom them out in the connector, making sure that you have the appropriate polarity. Red goes into the side that has yellow and black goes to black. Once you bottom this out, just snap them down. Before we move any further, I like to power up the bike and test it. We have light. It does take a couple seconds past turning on the bike for the license plate light to go on. So if it doesn't go on immediately, just give it a couple seconds, let it do its thing, and you'll see if you've made the connection right, you're good to go. Now, if for some reason you jiggle it and it's flashing or something like that, just refine the connection within here and you'll be good to go. We chose this after doing a big survey from BMW owners, which type of connector they would like. Some people just wanted like hardwired connectors, but then that would require giant holes in the undertail closeout. We didn't want to do that. This is probably the most practical connection we can make, and it's very easy to use. I'm going to S-fold all of this and bulk it up just like this and see if I can actually tie it off to the frame here. Under here, we have a volume that's enclosed by the outer fairing. So if we tie it off to here somewhere, should be good to go. This setup does come with a wire tie, so we can make use of that. It's just kind of difficult to pass it through here. Just gotta find a spot where it works. I have a spot here, managed to pass it through. Fortunately, nature gave me only 2 hands, so I'm gonna have to let go of some stuff, loop this, and redo it. All right, that's pretty nice. I'm just gonna refine it a little bit because I like neatness when it comes to wiring. Get it nice and tight so it doesn't move around. There we go. Cut off the excess. And now I'm basically going to grab my outer panel here, make sure that I've actually not created bulk, and we're looking good. So I'm just going to go in the reverse order of this assembly here. We're going to begin here by bringing the fairing into alignment with everything, making sure that this tab goes into its window first. We have some clearance issues here. There we go. Once this pops in, you just go up the line, press the push fasteners in the reverse order, and then replace that screw with the T25 Torx. When you do replace that screw, make sure that you're actually getting the shoulder into the hole and not clamping the outer surface. You can potentially damage the fairing by lacking the alignment, the concentric alignment between this boss and the hole. Once this bottoms out, it just requires a little bit to tighten it. Don't want to over tighten these connections. We are going to repeat the process on this side. At this point, we will replace the seat or seat cowl, whatever the bike is equipped with, and we are done. Power up the bike, make sure everything works. You can see our license plate mounting system works so well with our tail lighting system. It really is an entire package that comes together and cures the woes of the original design of the tail end here. I think this is a really sexy and sleek, sport-like setup. If you do agree, we do carry this product on tstindustries.com. You can find these parts there along with the other Fender Eliminator setup, crash protection components, controls. We have a whole host of components for this bike and other bikes you may have in your stable. I want to thank you for watching. If you like what we do, hit the subscribe button, and other than that, ride safe. Thank you. See you later.